Hi guys, welcome to ProtoPie. My name's Darren, and in this episode we're going to be looking at how to build a drag and drop interface. So we're going to have a list with some cards in it which you can go into an edit mode and you can reorder them. So if you do like this video, please make sure that you hit the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. And just a quick shout out to my training course which I've currently got on Udemy, Total ProtoPie. So if you want a more structured learning of how to learn this software, be sure to check out the Udemy course. I'll put a link in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get on with this week's video. So we've got this list here, and we're going to have the ability to reorder some of these cards, just one card specifically, just to kind of show you how you might approach this sort of thing. So let me just give you a quick demo of what we're going to be building. So I've got this list, which is just a scroll list. If I then, anywhere on the screen, if I just do a long press, I'm going to go into this edit mode, and now I can reorder some of the cards. So I'm just going to grab this card here, and I'm going to be able to order it with the card above it. You can see the card above it has slotted down to the position below, and I can also reorder it back the other way. Once I'm done, I'm just going to hit done at the top of here. We're going to come out of edit mode, and I've got my reordered list with my card in the second slot. So this is what we're going to be building. So let's get to it. Okay, so I've got this file set up. So just quickly to go through the structure of the file. So I've got a component which I've created previously, just a button component, which has its opacity turned down to 0. I've got a little bit of background blur. This is a specific iOS background blur layer that you can use, which comes with ProtoPie. I've then got another component, but it's just a regular tab bar. This is a bit of furniture just to kind of make it look a bit more appy. All the kind of cool stuff is happening inside of this container. So we've got a regular scroll container. And I've got my 4 cards here, card 1 through to 4. And importantly, I've got this drag block rectangle, which is just sitting on top of the cards. And that's going to come in useful as we go through and build things. I'm going to explain why this rectangle is here. Okay, cool. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create the long press so that we can start going into the edit mode. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a long press trigger, and we're going to specifically, I'm going to choose card 3 as the card I'm going to move around. But for long press, I want to be able to press anywhere on the screen. So I'm going to long press the drag block. So we're going to find our drag block rectangle here. And just to kind of go over and have another look at this drag block. So it's just a regular rectangle. It covers the whole of the scroll container. But if you just cast your eye over to the properties panel here, you can see that its opacity is 100%, but its fill opacity is 0. That means that it's invisible effectively. But because it's got an opacity of 100, it's going to block any triggers that are happening underneath. And specifically, we need that to be blocking the drag trigger, because we need to apply a drag trigger later on to that card 3. Okay, so to enable us to get access to that drag trigger, which is going to be obscured initially so we can scroll, we need to change some opacities of some objects. Okay, so on long press, we're going to long press the drag block, and we're going to add our first opacity. And the first thing we want to do is we want our done button to appear. So we're just going to choose our button done, and we're going to turn the opacity up to 100. Okay, so let's add another opacity. This is going to be full of opacities, this particular trigger. And we actually want the drag block's opacity to be reduced. So we're just going to choose that from the list, find our drag block, and we're going to turn its opacity down to 0. So like I said previously, turning the opacity down to 0 is going to reveal the drag trigger, which we're going to be creating in a little while. Okay, so next up, another opacity. this opacity is going to be just taking down the opacity of the, actually no it's not, it's going to be bringing up the opacity of the background blur. So we just need to choose background blur here, and we want to bring that opacity up to 100. Okay, and I've put a background blur behind the button so that when you're scrolling the scroll view up and down, you can still see the red button. It's just going to blur and just make sure that button's visible. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to add another 4 opacities, and these are all going to be targeting the other cards. So I just want to have a visual appearance that's different when you're in edit mode to when you're just scrolling. So I'm just going to knock the opacity down of all of the cards down to 80%. So I'm just going to choose each card in turn, and we're just going to put it at 80. In fact, no, let's carry on this way, that's fine. Turn this down to 80. Card 3 is also going to go down to 80. And finally card 4. I'm going to turn that down to 80. Okay, cool. So we've got our long press complete here. So we're going to long press. We're going to show our button done. We're going to hide our drag block so we have access to the drag trigger underneath. We're going to bring up our background blur, and we're just going to knock back all the opacities of the cards. So we can just give that a quick test here. So I can just tap anywhere, and we can see all the cards have tinted back, and we've got our done button showing. So that's looking good. Okay. Next up, we're going to, what should we do next? We'll do the drag trigger. Okay, so we're going to add a drag trigger. And we want to specifically be able to drag card 3. So that's the card that I'm going to be using for this demo. And when we add a drag trigger, we then have access to only a few responses. Actually, drag doesn't have a lot of responses that you can use with it. So specifically, we're going to be moving an object when we drag it. You can also scale an object, and you can also rotate it as well, but we're just going to be using move. And when we choose move, you can see that we've got a few different directions we can drag around. So the diagonal arrows here mean we can drag in both the horizontal and the vertical, or we can constrain specifically to horizontal or vertical. So we're going to constrain it to vertical because we're just going to be dragging up and down, and we're going to limit it to the screen. So this, when it says limit to screen, it really means limit to the inside of the container. So we're just going to limit our drag ability to inside of the container. And that effectively sets up, looking good there. So let's just try that out. So if I do my long press, and if I can now grab my card, and you can see I can only move it up and down. What you can also see is it's kind of sitting behind the other cards, and that looks a little bit weird. And that's because if we have a look over the layers, card 3 is actually all the way down in the layer hierarchy. It's sitting underneath card 2, and it's sitting underneath card 1. So we're going to need to add some more things to fix that. Okay, moving on to the next trigger. So we're going to next add a touch down trigger. So when our mouse touches down, and we're going to set the target to card 3. So when we touch down on card 3, we saw that we have this problem with the card sitting underneath the other 2 cards, but there's a response which allows us to reorder layers. So we're going to choose that response, and that's called, interestingly, reorder. And reorder gives you a few options of how you can reorder the target layer. So you can just move the layer up 1 from its current position and down from its current position, but you can also move it right to the top of the layer group or right to the bottom. And it's worth noting that reordering only works within a single group. So I can't take this card 3 layer here, which is in its container, and move it all the way up to the top. I can only move it within the container that it's currently in. But that's fine. That's exactly what I want to do anyway. And I'm just going to set it to go right to the top of the group. So it's going to sit right at the top of this container here. Okay. Next up, I want to up the opacity of the card because we're actually dragging it. I want to, again, we've got the rest of the cards not back to 80%. I want the card I'm dragging to just look a little bit different and just make it a little bit easier to see. So we're just going to add an opacity to card 3 and we're just going to bring that up to 100%. Okay, that's pretty much all we need to do on this touchdown trigger. Okay, so let's give that a test. So I've got my scrolling list. I can drag I can long press anywhere to go into edit mode. And then when I grab this card, you can see that it's now got 100% opacity, and you can see now that it's sitting on top of the other two cards. So effectively, I've successfully reordered it. Okay, but I can't really drop it anywhere. Nothing's really moving out the way. It will drop where I finish. When I'm dragging it around, I can just move it and I can just leave it there, but that's not really the reordering functionality that we want. So we've got a little bit more work to do here. Okay, so what are we going to do next? We're going to work on this reordering positional stuff. So to do that, effectively what we want to do is we want card 2 to move out of the way when we drag card 3 into a certain position. So to do that, we're going to add a detect trigger, and we're going to add a condition. And we want this condition to detect when card 3's Y is in a certain position. So because we want card 3, so if I just grab card 3 here, and if I just move it up, we want it about 320. So we want it about halfway. So it's overlapping card 2 by about halfway. And then when that happens, we want the cards to reorder. So in this condition, we're going to make sure we choose card 3 as the target. And we want the Y property because we're moving only up and down. We're only interested in the Y property here. And we want to look for when the Y property is less than 320, which is where we've got that overlap. Okay, so with that condition in place, we want to move card 2. So we want to select a move response, and we want to select card 2 as the target. And we want to move it to effectively card 3's initial position, which is 440. So let's just set that to 440. Okay. And the other thing we want to do, we want to change the easing to ease out. You get a very strange, in fact, I'm just going to leave it on ease in and out, just kind of show you the strange movement that you get when you do this with this sort of easing curve, and then we'll change it in a second. Okay, so that's my first condition set. I now want to set another condition, and this is effectively going to be when card 3's Y position is greater than 320. So if we want to move it back to its original position, so we're going to choose card 3 as the target for the condition. And we're going to choose the Y property again, and this time we're going to look for it being greater than 320. Okay, and when that happens, we want to add another move response here. And we want to move card 3 back to its original position, which is 440. Okay, so that's looking good. Let's just test that, see what we got. So we're going to edit mode, and we're going to bring card 3 into card 2's position. Hopefully you saw the strange animation there. Let's just do that back the other way. Right, we haven't done the actual response for the other way, but let's just restart that just so you can see that again. So I'm just going to go into edit mode, and then when I drag, I get this kind of slow moving animation, and that's because we've got this easing in and out easing curve. So we're just going to change that into an ease out. So let's just do that now. So we'll select the move response, and we're going to change this to ease out, and we're going to do the same to the other move response. Okay. That's looking good. Okay, so we're going to deal with moving in the other direction now. So what we're going to do is what we're going to do is so next up, we're going to deal with the snapping of the cards into the correct position, because as you could see previously, the card we're dragging just effectively stays wherever we leave it. So to do that, we're going to add a touch up trigger. And we're going to add this touch up on the card 3. That's going to be our target. And we're going to add a condition to this. And the condition is going to look for card 3's Y position. And again, we want to know if it's less than 320. So we're just going to type less than 320. And when we do this, we're going to add another move response. So we're going to move card 3. So make sure we've got card 3 as our target. And we're going to move it to position 220. Which is effectively card 2's position, as we can see here. Okay, we're going to add another condition. And this is looking for when we move it the other way. So if we choose card 3 again, and we want the Y position, and we want this time the Y position to look for greater than 320. And if that's true, we want to move the card, and that's card 3. We want to move it to 440, which was its original position. Okay, so let's test that and see what we've got. So I've got my scroll view. I'm going to tap to go into edit mode. I'm going to grab my card 3 and I'm going to move it into card 2's position. And you can see when I drop it, it just snaps into the correct place. Even if I move it slightly out of the way, you can see it's on touch up, it's moving into that correct position. And if I move the other way, we've got a problem. Okay, so it seems that the card isn't moving the other way. So let's just go back and check our detect trigger here. So we're detecting the movement of card 3. And if card 3's Y is less than 320, we want to move card 2 to 440. But if card 3's Y is greater, we want to move card 2, not card 3, to 220. Okay, let's try that, see if that's fixed it. So go into edit mode, move in one position, and move it in the other position. Yep, that's fixed it. That's my bad. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we can see we've got our dragging and reordering happening successfully. We've got everything moving nicely. And finally, we just want to basically put our view back into its normal mode. We're still in this edit mode. Okay, to do that, we're going to what we're going to do is we're going to add a tap trigger, and we're going to target our button.done. Let's just move this underneath here. And to this, we're effectively going to put back everything the way it was. So what we can do actually is we can grab all of our opacities from the long press. We're going to copy these, and we're going to paste them into our tap trigger. And effectively we want to reverse them. So button done, which was 100, we want to take that down to 0. Drag block needs to come back up. Background blur needs to go down. Card 1 opacity needs to go back up to 100, as does all the other cards. So these all just need to go back up to 100. And one final thing we need to do is we need to add a reorder, because what's basically happened is that when we reordered this our card 3, we actually moved it above the drag block, which means that it's going to be accessible. So we actually need to move the drag block back up to the top to make sure it's blocking that drag. So we're just going to add one final reorder to the bottom of this tap trigger, and we're going to target the drag block layer, and we're going to move that up to the top. Okay, that should be it. Okay, so let's give that a test and see what we got. So we're going to edit mode, We can pick out our card and reorder it, and we can hit done to come back to normal mode, and we can see we've got our successfully reordered list inside of our view. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this look at how you can do drag and drop reordering inside of your mobile app inside of ProtoPie. And there's obviously lots of other extra things you could do here. Obviously, you can make all of the cards drag and droppable. Need to work out all the potential positions there. So yeah, it's something that you can do. But this is a very simple look at really just using the drag trigger, using the reordering, and effectively being able to prototype up this kind of interface. Okay, so if you like the video, then please give it a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video and it's given you a little bit more insight how to do some interfaces which are a little bit more complex. Certainly fairly easy to do inside of ProtoPie. Okay, so this brings us to the end. I'm going to stop yabbering and let you get back to your lives, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.